The Secret Service has shifted members of President Biden's team over to former President Donald Trump's in the aftermath of the assassination attempt last month. Per the New York Times, a Secret Service official said the move is an unusual one, but, quote, the increased threat of violence against Mr. Trump combined with Mr. Biden's recent reduced travel schedule made the step both necessary and feasible.
The Secret Service has bolstered its protection in several other ways, including adding ballistic glass at future outdoor rallies. This sort of bulletproof glass is normally provided for sitting presidents and vice presidents and is coordinated by the Department of Defense. According to the Post, the glass is transported using military aircraft. Trump has not held an outdoor rally since the assassination attempt in Butler. The Secret Service had originally urged the Trump campaign to temporarily stop having outdoor rallies. Trump told Elon Musk he planned to return to Butler in October. Meanwhile, investigations into the assassination attempt are ongoing. So we're going to have a president in a box, just a glass box, and he'll deliver speeches from the box.
A glass cage of emotions.
Yes, yeah. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, it feels like COVID, which was, of course, also a safety precaution, but when you would go to a restaurant and order pickup food and there was just a plastic thing between you, I can't imagine the effect of going to a live speech being any better than watching a screen with the glass. I don't know. It feels like a wall between you and the person you're going to see.
Yeah, I will say it's not as, divisive as the things we saw during COVID. I mean, this is something that is traditionally put in place for presidents. So if you want to look at an example of it, when Trump gave his big July 4th speech at the National Mall in Washington, D.C., there's sort of these panels as opposed to like a big box around him. So it's not quite as, it doesn't block your view quite as much as you would think. But I mean, that being said, this is sort of the bare minimum I think that the Secret Service could do, considering their director and now the deputy director who has stepped into the former director's position have provided basically no answers as to how there was this massive security failure at Butler. All of their explanations have been incredibly poor, and the so-called investigation that's been taking place, I mean, it's been almost 2 months at this point since the assassination attempt. We're no closer to figuring out exactly how they failed so miserably. So to be like, oh, well, we're going to give you a few more guys on your team. It's like, all right, well, you guys already almost got him killed. How is anybody supposed to trust you now?
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way about the Secret Service, especially how Kimberly Cheadle performed in the congressional hearing, because I really don't think Kimberly Cheadle was responsible. What her duty was to maybe describe what went wrong to the people in Congress, which she failed to, which makes sense that she resigned. But there are people who are very likely still working for the Secret Service. We haven't heard about investigations or firing of the agents who worked that day. But clearly someone didn't do their job properly if it's not an issue with standard protocol. And so I think that you don't have to cancel outdoor rallies, do them in arenas where you can secure the scene much more easily than if you're in a field in Pennsylvania. I mean, that makes sense to me. It also does make sense for in the meantime until we figure out how to secure the scene better, how to establish protocols where we coordinate with local law enforcement better. You know, we're gonna pause the rallies, but when we go back, I don't know, the glass fine a precaution that's similar to what we see in the inauguration addresses. But also, they've got to just pick locations where they can secure the scene more easily for these rallies outside.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I would push back a little bit on the idea that Kimberly Cheadle wasn't responsible. Just by nature of being the head person of Secret Service, you are responsible for security failures, even if you weren't directly on the scene that day. It should be your job to make sure that the people below you as a leader are carrying out proper protocol. But you're right on the point that putting up glass is not addressing what really went wrong in Butler, which is that they had, as we talked to Richie McGinnis last week on the Friday episode of Rising, who went back to Butler and took video of the scene and showed where all of the security lapses took place with a couple members of Congress. And he pointed out that this location where the sniper was set up on top of the infamous sloped roof was directly underneath a water tower that was unguarded by Secret Service. There was an open chain link fence that was completely unguarded by Secret Service that was directly behind where the president was speaking. You had Secret Service members go down to scope out an area and like forget their security card, so they weren't even able to get back into the building where they were supposed to be scanning the area as counter snipers. So there was only one counter sniper available at the time that this guy started shooting. I mean, all of these issues have yet to be addressed by the Secret Service. And actually, none of them have really even been acknowledged as to why those locations were not covered, and then why this was chosen in the first place as someplace that was safe for Trump to speak, because there were so many open buildings around the perimeter. Congressman Eli Crane, who went into that visit with Richie McGinnis and Benny Johnson, said, just based on my military experience, like I've never worked in the Secret Service, but just scanning the area, it seems obvious that you wouldn't do a rally here.
Yeah, we covered a story yesterday on Secret Service agents that were in Massachusetts for a Harris fundraiser. They covered the security camera of a small business that a woman owned with duct tape. And then she has on security camera footage inside that was not covered, people going in and out and using the bathroom. And the Secret Service confirmed that the person who covered the camera was an agent. But of course, we don't have footage of people going, entering. And so they didn't say anything about if Secret Service picked the lock and entered, as she believed they had. But I think it speaks to something that these are people who are enforcing the law in some way, securing the scene, preventing people from breaking the law and harming powerful people in our country. But they're housed within the Department of Treasury, and they're very disconnected from other law enforcement. And to just enter someone's business without permission, like the Secret Service could have been like, hey, we're going to be in the area. We can't have Ring cameras filming our agents. And that's recipe for a lawsuit, because I'm pretty sure you're allowed to have a camera protecting your place of business. It just feels like a weird infringement upon personal liberties, and it feels like people who think they have so much power because they're in the Secret Service that they can do whatever they want and shirk accountability. I think it's good that nothing bad happened before they figured this out and addressed some of the clear problems within the Secret Service.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you don't consider the former president almost dying bad, but point taken, nobody actually died, which is good news. But
so bad, still bad.
Yeah, still bad.
Not
I
terrible.
mean, we basically got almost the worst outcome
right.
before we started addressing this. But again, like Kimberly Cheadle going into this congressional hearing and saying, well, we couldn't put officers on that roof because it was too sloped. Meanwhile, the roof that they were actually on was more sloped. It's just unbelievable incompetence. And then after, and pretty much immediately after the assassination attempt, she actually showed up at the Republican National Convention to do this sort of victory lap, as the most important thing that the Secret Service agents there were interested in doing was taking my lighters so I couldn't smoke inside the perimeter. But then like less than a mile outside of the perimeter, they had two incidents where people actually were killed because they were being crazy and walking around with guns. So yeah, it's pathetic. I'm glad she resigned, but there's obviously still a major cleanup that needs to happen in the Secret Service.
So they were open carrying where they weren't allowed to?
There was one guy who had, well, he wasn't killed, but he had a bag full of guns and ammo and like no permit or anything, and had a scream mask, which seems a little sketchy. And then there was another person who, I think it was sort of a mentally unwell homeless situation where he had tried to stab somebody and then charged at the police with the knife, and he was shot and killed. And both of these were basically right outside of the convention center. But the good news, I think, is that there was no indication that either of these were intended political violence. It was just kind of Milwaukee being Milwaukee.
But God forbid you have a cigarette.
You can't have a
Come
cigarette.
on, guys.
No vapes, no cigarettes. They hate us.
That's sad. What happened to our freedom? What happened to America?
Yeah, I thought this was America.
This is what I thought they were fighting for. All right, we've got more Rising after this.